Chapter 7, Panel Assembly and Manufacture. The materials needed for this section will be industrial grade Velcro. We're using 3M's SJA-7501 and 7502, the hook and loop adhesive backed reclosable fastener, 1 inch wide and 50 yards per roll. You'll also need some cover materials. We're going to be making 2 sets of covers. Our first set is going to be made out of a roll of 10 foot by 25 foot clear 6mm plastic sheeting, and our second set is going to be made out of a 6 foot by 40 foot green sun screen fabric. The tools needed, we'll be using a T-square, I'm using the 4 foot, a Sharpie or marking utensil, and a pair of scissors. The many faces of the dome make covering it a challenge. Our first orthodummies were covered in 6mm clear vinyl sheeting, hand sewn into 5 interlocking panels. Sam can tell you more about it. He did about 80% of it. But from my perspective, it was highly intensive and difficult to replicate without being fairly skilled at sewing, even with a full-size pattern. One of the 2 main reasons I modified the dome's configuration for this version was so that I could decrease its number of faces and simplify the panel manufacturing process. We've also been talking about the modularity of the covers and using different covers for different seasons or conditions. So we'll also be making a set of panels from a shade cloth material. After simplifying the design, we're left with 10 panels to manufacture. 5 will have a hexagon connected to a rectangle, and 5 will have a triangle connected to a rectangle. I'm going to be making both a set of shade cloth panels as well as a set of clear vinyl. So I'll be laying out the shade cloth first in the hopes that I can see my lines through the clear vinyl, making for a simple transfer. I was also lucky to have purchased a roll of shade cloth that was 6 feet wide, as that happened to be the height of our primary panels. Unroll the material as much as you're able, and try to lay it down smoothly. Take your T-square and Sharpie, then starting in the top corner, measure over 10 inches and make a mark. Then measure 22 inches down from the top corner again and make another mark. Connect those 2 points with a line, and this is the first side of the hexagon. Measure an additional 22 inches past your initial mark along the top edge and make another mark. That's your second hexagon side. This only gets easier the more times you do it, so I'm just going to jump to the larger fabrication points, as opposed to trying to explain every single step. Your marks along the top edge will be in the following pattern: 10 inches, 22 inches, 10 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches, 22 inches, 10 inches, and so forth. Your measurements along the bottom edge will begin with an 8.5 inch in mark, but will be every 25 inches after that. I wouldn't recommend doing all your measurements along the tops and bottom edges first. Chances are the shade cloth will make that challenging. Start at one end and draw 1 alternating panel at a time, seeing the simplicity of the pattern. The hexagon is 42 inches wide, 10 inches to each point from the end points of the 22-inch top edge, and 8.5 inches from the end points of the 25-inch bottom edge. The hexagon is also 42 inches tall, with the points being 22 inches from the top. The irregularity of the top and bottom edges is reflected on the sides, as the top 2 diagonal edges measure 24 inches, while the 2 bottom diagonal edges measure 22 inches. The rectangle adjacent to the hexagon is 25 inches wide and 30 inches tall. Like I said, this will all get easier the more times you do it and see the simplicity of the pattern. An alternating triangle rectangle panel comes next. The rectangle is the same size, 25 inches wide and 30 inches tall. The triangle sits on top of it with a 25-inch base and diagonal edges of 22 inches. The triangle only stands 18 inches tall, however, so I like to measure 12.5 over to the center of the top edge of that rectangle and measure up 18 inches and triangulate from there. It's difficult to be precise, but this 18-inch tall triangle will sit approximately 2 inches below the nearby points of the hexagons, and the triangle's peak should sit approximately 4 inches from each hexagonal point laterally, those points being approximately 8 inches from one another. That 8 inch is in the pattern of measurements along the top edge, before starting into another 10 inch of the hexagonal point. After you have a few connected, you can see how that'll fold into one another, creating a 3-dimensional shape. It is easy to transfer the lines made on the shade cloth through the clear vinyl sheeting. I was able to draw out both sets at the same time using this approach. After all your lines are marked and you're satisfied with your measurements, use a pair of scissors to cut out all of the panels. Take care when cutting the clear vinyl in particular not to cut into the panel, but rather away from it, preferably into what is being removed, so as not to create any small cuts where tears can start. Now you're going to affix some industrial grade Velcro to these panels. Some of these panels' edges will be Velcroing to other panels, and some edges will be Velcroing directly to the dome structure. The relative conduit struts have been affixed with the hook side of the Velcro, so all the panel edges attaching to the dome will have the complementary loop affixed. The larger hexagon rectangle panels are going to be our entry panels, being accessed most often by the user, so the triangle rectangle patterns will go on first. The hexagon rectangle panels will then go on after them, Velcroing to the triangle rectangle panel as well as the dome on the top and top left edge, interlacing with the following hexagon on the top right edge. Now, in terms of simple manufacturing notes, the triangle panel has 4 strips of loop on the bottom side and 4 strips of hook on the top side, each 2 22-inch and 2 30-inch strips. No Velcro goes on the bottom edge of the panel. Lay the adhesive Velcro right along the edge of the panel and press it firmly to affix it securely. 7 strips of loop go on the underside of the hexagon rectangle panels, and 1 side of hook goes on the top. The underside strip measurements being 3 22-inch, 2 24-inch, and 2 30-inch. Again, no Velcro goes on the bottom edge of the panel. A 24-inch strip of hook goes on the top left edge of the top side of the hexagon panel. I decided it would be better to put the hook side on the conduit as opposed to the loop, as I imagined it maintained better against the sustained elements, while I imagined the loop might go fuzzy on me. Hook strips should be placed at the crests of the relevant struts and pressed firmly to affix. Now the panels can be Velcroed to the dome. Try to place the panels on the conduit with the corners of the panels at the intersections of the conduit. Make sure all the Velcro is pressed firmly to itself once all the panels are in place. And that concludes the outer panel manufacture and assembly portion of this DIY Hortodomi instruction.